On today's podcast, Siimon Reynolds is our guest. Siimon is currently mentoring business owners and CEOs around the world to help them grow revenue, maximize profits, raise capital, develop strong sales funnels, increase efficiency, and maintain a work-life balance. He has owned and run a successful business over 20 years and has personally raised $19 million for his startup ventures. Siimon was also featured as a shark on Australia's version of Shark Tank. Thank you for joining us today, Siimon.
Oh, it's fantastic to be here. I'm excited.
I'm super excited to have you on our show today. So I'm just going to get right into it and ask you. So tell us, you've had so many years of experience running your own business, working with a ton of great CEOs and business owners. What are you doing and keeping busy for today, actually?
Sure. Well, look, I've spent a lifetime in the advertising and marketing fields. And then my wife, who works in television, wanted to return back to America. And I'd owned my own company since I was 23. Oh, wow. And I had built a pretty large company, the 15th biggest marketing group in the world, with 6,000 staff. Wow. in 14 countries. And we had 54 different companies in the group. And I didn't want to open another company. And so I'm too young to retire. So I thought, well, what should I do? I'll mentor entrepreneurs. So for the last 11 years here in Los Angeles and literally all around the world via Zoom or Skype, I mentor entrepreneurs of all different descriptions. Everyone from people worth hundreds of millions to people who are 2 months into a startup. Wow. And it's been fantastic.
That's amazing. 11 years of doing this. I mean, that's where I want to get to in 10 plus years. But I mean, it sounds like you're having so much fun. So how did you start in advertising and marketing? Because, did you study that in school, or how did you get into the industry in the first place?
Well, that's a great question. When I was growing up, there was this TV show called Bewitched, where there was an advertising executive who was married to a witch. And I used to watch this in the afternoon. I thought, oh, advertising looks so fun. And I also didn't want to go to university. I hated school. I wanted to get out of it. And advertising seemed to be one of those careers where you could make money, have fun, and not have to go to university. So that was my kind of career. And I started investigating that. And pretty much straight after school, like 2 weeks after I graduated from school, I was working full-time in advertising. And then at age 23, I opened my first ad agency. And then I opened up another 3 or 4 after that over the next 20 years. And advertising is a brilliant career. It's very fun. It's very interesting. It's always changing. But after a lifetime of it, you want to do something different. And that's how I ended up being a business coach.
Oh, that's amazing, because that's the type of kind of career I started actually in, right? When back in the day, I studied finance in university, but I had my first job as an advertising sales rep for not Yellow Pages, but a printed directory of all websites. This was back in 2003, before Google took off. It was a great concept and idea. It was called Red Toronto, an online search engine for a local directory, but printed in a physical book of all websites, going to every single home and business, right? Because as you know, the phone book kind of was what Google is today, right? It was a directory of every single business. When people are ready to buy, they actively just search. So that's how I got into sales.
Yeah.
And advertising.
Well, I'm a huge believer in getting sales knowledge. And I think you have one of the master skills that's needed for marketing, and that is to understand how to get a sale. There's a lot of people who invest in marketing, but their knowledge of actually closing a sale is missing. And so the danger for entrepreneurs is they spend money on marketing, but they can't convert it into revenue. And so I think what your history coming into marketing from sales is a brilliant thing.
Well, thank you. I've learned quite a lot from a lot of sales professionals, and I'm always picking their brain because for me, I got to replicate what successful people are doing, right? And I'm going to mimic them and gain insight, right? So that's what I do, mirror ones that are always the president's gold circles, the ones that are really overachievers, and just replicate what they do. And
Yeah.
take them out for lunch, dinner, whatever it is, but get to know them and to know their secrets.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of key lessons in what you're saying that I think for the listeners and viewers are really relevant. And number one, you didn't just say, "Oh, I'm not good at sales," or "I'm good at sales," like a lot of people do. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a terrible salesman," or whatever. You said, "You know what? I'm going to find the people who are good, and I'm going to model them." And eventually become good. And then the second thing is your whole learning mindset is really important. Brian Tracy, who's written 80 books on success, 80 books on success, has a key foundational thought in his own life, which is all business skills are learnable. And that was very meaningful for me many years ago. And it's really important for us all to remember that just because we're not good at something doesn't mean we can't become absolutely excellent at it. I remember I used to be terrible at public speaking, and then I was terrified of it, but became above average, some would say very good at it, simply by treating it as a skill that needed to be learned. And I think that combination of modeling excellent people and having a philosophy of starting an improvement program regarding our business skills is virtually guarantees success in business.
Well, I think you brought up a couple points, and it's funny because last year I started doing public speaking, and I've never done public speaking before. I've always been in sales, running a business. And, after 20 plus events speaking, I'm now so confident, and it's more about practice. And that was the fear that I had as well, right? And now I'm much more confident because end of the day, you're helping them, the audience member, they came out to see you, right? So you shouldn't be the one scared. They're the ones that want to come in and learn something from you, right? So just be yourself, be genuine, talk about stories, talk about experiences, and you're really gonna people will see right through you if you're nervous or not. So the more comfortable, the easier it is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the key to what you've said is this practice.
Yes.
That for the entrepreneurs listening, just because if before we can decide whether we're good at something, we need to have practiced it at least 100 times.
Yes.
And then you can say, "Oh, I'm a good salesman," or "I'm a bad salesman," or then you can say, "Oh, I'm a good entrepreneur," or whatever. But until we endlessly practice something, we can't make a decision about whether we're any good at it. And a lot of people will be, watching this and or listening to this and saying, their business is at a crossroads. And they're saying, "Am I any good at this? Does this have a future?" And all I'd say to them is, having coached hundreds of entrepreneurs, I'd say before you give up on your business and before you put a limit on your business, ask yourself, what are the key skills that someone who's good at this business does well? And what kind of program can I start a little bit every day to improve my skills development? Because, unless we have a mentality of an obsession for an improvement in business, then it's almost impossible, no matter how talented we are, to reach the top of any industry.
That's such a great insight from you, Siimon. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because I've been practicing and preaching, listening to a lot of audiobooks, reading a lot, all my life, right? It's when I first started sales, it was all about, Brian Tracy's, Zig Ziglar's. It was all about anyone that was Napoleon Hill, all the successful people, right?
Yeah.
just listening, reading as much as possible. And then now when I'm doing speaking, it was all about TED Talks, right? Who was performing and how did they perceive themselves and, act confident. And now I'm doing podcasts. I'm trying to learn about this whole industry and just continuous learning because I'm curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more curious I am on how to become as efficient as possible, and yes, I'm going to make mistakes. It's okay, right? And just improve. Slow improvements, right? Because it's never an overnight success.
Oh, 100%. One of the most impactful things I've ever been taught, which I teach all my coaching students, is at the end of each day, just spend 3 minutes analyzing what did I do well and what could I have done better. And the what did I do well is wonderful because it reminds you, even if you've had a bad day, that you've usually done some pretty good things as well. And I'm always surprised when I do it. Here, look, I have a book where literally every day I write this. That stays on my desk. What did I do well? And what did I do better, right? And I'm always amazed, even on bad days, hey, yeah, I did that well. Yeah, I did that well. Yeah, I did that well. But on the other side, what could I have done better? Now, how could I do that better? And the reason I mention this now is because a lot of people read and a lot of people have an interest in learning. But what's really crucial, and you've obviously done this, what's really crucial is we say, okay, what can we do tomorrow to rise up higher? Not rather, if we're not careful, we end up with this incredible knowledge bank, but we don't do much with it, and if all you needed was knowledge, then librarians would rule the world. We've got to say, okay, how does that lead to improvement tomorrow? And so if we have this iterative improvement, this step-by-step optimization, this 1% improvement mentality, then it doesn't matter whether we're smarter or dumber than someone else. We will eventually outperform almost everybody. And maybe we won't be the number one in our field, but almost, as Brian Tracy said, everyone can get to the top 10% of their field. Everyone. No matter what industry you're in, you can get in the top 10% of it, because the vast majority of people do not have this attitude of constant improvement and really analyzing, where am I weak? How do I fix it? Where am I strong? How do I get even better at it? And you've got it. I've got it. And, we're blessed, having been educated by those authors over time, to have that instilled in us. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are very stressed about their results and can't sleep because of their business results. And all of these problems could be solved if they just improved 1% every day and really analyzed themselves daily.
And they're putting so much pressure on themselves, right? And I mean, that's another thing in terms of running a business, because you're pulled in so many directions if you're not careful, right? You got to really focus on what's the most important task that you need to focus on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? And really focus on that. Like, if you want to improve efficiencies or productivity in certain areas of your business, do it. And then move on, right? Make sure someone's accountable. Like, as a business owner, I've kind of learned a lot of these things by trial and error, actually. But it's fun, right? Because for me, I'm always curious. And I'm always wondering, it didn't work out as well as we did last month. Can we do a little tweak here and see if it will make a difference? Or I don't like giving up completely because I know it works. It's just how to do it. Refine it, tweak it, pivot, whatever it is, right? To make it a little bit better.
Yeah, what is interesting, Anders Ericsson, who's probably the most famous researcher on elite performance, he said that the people at the top of their fields, they don't just practice; they do what he calls deliberate practice. So they're thinking all the time about what they need to practice, which we've talked about. But secondarily, they're practicing difficult things.
Yes.
So this is the other half of it. When I'm coaching entrepreneurs, what I see often is, for instance, someone avoiding studying finances, how to do the basic understanding of cash flow and stuff, right? And I can relate to that because I'm not really oriented in that direction. And so what happens is they avoid looking at self-improvement in those areas because it's uncomfortable. You know, I have this technique that has helped me enormously and might help the listeners, which is I call it U20. U20. So U20 is I want to do things that make me uncomfortable for at least 20 minutes. So I look at if I look at my to-do list, I try and orient myself to what's uncomfortable. I've got to do that first, but because it's a bit overwhelming, I'll just do it for 20 minutes and make progress on it. And that's helped me incredibly because I'm often the things that I'm uncomfortable about are the things that are going to grow the business, ringing that client or doing the boring finances or having that uncomfortable conversation. These are the things that drive us forward, or developing that uncomfortable skill. And Anders Ericsson's breakthrough research was most people don't practice. Then the people who practice often just practice the good things that are easy, that they enjoy. And then the people who get to the absolute top are looking for their weaknesses, looking for what they're not so good at and stepping into it, leaning into it. And, you know, that combination is absolutely phenomenal over time.
Yeah, that's a great point because I look back at what I've been, you know, I have been doing sales all my life, and there's a lot of people when you train them and you hire them, they're just not fit for, you know, the cold calls or rejection or objection handling and stuff like that, right? And I would just do a mock call with them and just, you know, have fun, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like practice, right? In sales, we've always learned like sit down and practice and imagine that win. How does it feel like, right? And all these things are all about practice, right? Just like in your health, the food that you eat, the lifestyle you want to live, it's all about imagining what you want and then going out and doing it.
Yeah. And I love that you're talking about forward imagining like that. And I think it's so crucial. And, you know, one of my passions is sports psychology, so elite professional sports mental training.
Okay.
And I'm constantly reading. I mean, literally in the last 24 hours, I've been reading a great sports psychologist. And again and again, it comes up that all the elite performers are imagining their future performance, imagining how they should perform, trying to visualize that they're performing at a high level. Now, I believe, and it's a fundamental of my coaching, that we need to bring elite professional sports mental performance coaching into the business world. And I think it's so wonderful that you're always picturing forward performance, you know, how you're going to be, because I think that's what all entrepreneurs should be doing. All business executives should be doing. We've got to have a very clear view of our future self. Who is the person we're working towards becoming? Now, if you ask the average person that, tell me exactly about what you want to be in 3 years' time. Most people can't say that. Now, there's several parts to it. There's what do I want to have achieved in 3 years' time? And most people can't articulate that very clearly. And then there's who do I want to be? What type of person am I working towards becoming? And so most people don't have only the blurriest idea of that. And, you know, if you don't have to be the smartest person in the world, if you're super clear on the direction you're going, you're going to absolutely obliterate your competitors. Even if they're, you know, Mensa geniuses, they won't be able to compete. And so I'm a huge believer in what you say. And I do it every day. In fact, prior to this, I did a certain number of minutes visualizing business performance, visualizing myself performing really well. And there's tremendous amounts of strong university-backed research that shows that, as the famous psychologist William James said, we become what we think about most of the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree any more. Like, in terms of clarity and just making sure that you're working and not being present, first off, because the majority of the people are so scrambled. They don't even know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's so many distractions in today's world and economy, and technology hasn't even helped in one single bit. But if you think, and I'm going to go back to sports, because sports psychology is a great example. Peak performance, the ones that are doing, Major League Baseball or basketball or football, they imagine that touchdown or that game-winning shot, goal, or whatever it may be, and they practice that all their lives, right? Mm-hmm. From childhood to, university, college to professional. And then what happens is when they actually do it, it's like a habit that they've already imagined years ago. And it's like the same thing for business. You should be anyways. But a lot of people don't go through that, or they don't have the trainers and the, facilities and the resources to do that for business, right?
Yeah, exactly right. I believe one of the travesties of the education system is you can do 10, 12 years of school and you can get out of there and no one's taught you how to mentally see your future, how to move towards a deliberate future. I mean, that is the very essence of achievement. And yet, so many people, even intelligent people, have not been given those skills. And what we find in the business world is a lot of people right now are thinking having thoughts that are thoughts of doubt about their abilities in business, thoughts of fear about what's going to happen to their business. And they are accepting these thoughts as real. And they don't fully comprehend these are just thoughts. These are just things that are popping into your head, and you can take control of your thoughts. And all the elite sports people, and now a lot of the elite military units, they're spending, like Navy SEALs, they're spending a lot of time teaching them how to take control of your thoughts and to turn away and focus on where you want to go, and instead of focusing on what could go wrong.
Yes.
Brian Tracy said a great thing. He said, successful people are always thinking about what are my goals and how do I get them? What are my goals and how do I get them? Whereas unsuccessful people are thinking, what's going wrong and who's to blame? What's going wrong and who's to blame? I think that's so true. I think that one of the great moments in a human's life is when they learn that they can take command of their thinking and direct it in a way that's going to get them great results, rather than listening to this stuff that's negative as if it's real.
But there's so much media that goes on with this negativity today, right? And people you surround yourself with, right? So if you're checking on Facebook and you have a history of checking out whatever or following people that are always negative, you're going to have ads pop up with you all the time, right? Like, and then you surround yourself with all that, and then you take it on to your home and your family, and everyone becomes miserable, right? Like, that's the challenge. I stay away from social media. I stay away from all that clutter, and I really just am present when I'm with my son or when I'm at the gym. I'm just focused. And right now, like, no phone is near me. I'm just present, right? Because it's so important to actually want to be there and focus, so you're fully clear on the intention of what we are talking about, and you're present, right? Like, you're embracing the entire moment.
Yeah, I so agree, and that is difficult to achieve, isn't it? In a world where we're getting all these things popping out of our computers, and people are walking to the office, and our life is fragmented like never before. And I think that's a terrific skill to be working towards. I always remember that reading that people said that when you were one of the things that made Bill Clinton so successful, to be able to do 2 terms as president, apparently that when he was with you, you felt that he was fully present and listening to you.
Yes.
And that so impacted key people that he was talking to, that they became fans and supporters and helped him along the road. And that kind of presence it's an awesome skill. And the whole, no doubt, you've investigated this, the whole field of mindfulness that a lot of corporations are studying. What was the world of the Buddhist monk or the esoteric meditator has now become such a big issue inside the corporate world. Are our employees mindful? Are they bringing their full self to the moment? And what's really interesting about the research is not only does it show, as you said, that you're going to be more effective, it's a happier and more joyful existence to be present, rather than to be fragmented.
And it'll be memorable, right? And you want a lasting, experience with every individual, right? So in sales, this is what I've learned. Like, you ask questions and you remember those things that they mentioned because you're focused on that conversation. With all these fragmented things popping up, and if you're scrambling, guess what? You're not really there for that customer, right? Yeah. So that's how I kind of refine focus and, just try the best I can. But I know it's very difficult, but it is practice, right? Like, you just have to keep practicing it. And remember, 10 years ago, there was no technology like what it is today. There was no cell phone, smartphones, right? Pagers even. I mean, how did they exist? I mean, all the people that were selling before, they didn't have no smartphones. They had a sheet of paper, right? And made notes.
Yeah. Well, one of my philosophies when I'm teaching, coaching entrepreneurs is I have this rule: ABC, always be in control.
Yeah.
And so be in control of your time. Don't let clients take over your day, and also being in control of your environment. Don't let people interrupt and just be able to talk to you at any point in time, but also be in control of your technology. Don't allow emails to come towards you and take your consciousness, or cell phone messages. These things need to be off most of the time. Otherwise, we end up not only being fractured and not whole in our thinking, and so thinking in a low quality way, we end up being outbound with our headspace instead of being inner centered. Like, there's so many people who are constantly being looking at outside influences, whether it's TV or all this digital stuff, and there's just not enough collecting of thoughts. There's a great New Zealand coach said, when you are centered, you can do anything. Mm-hmm. And I really believe that.
That's amazing. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions regarding, in terms of like growing up in your dream job. Did you ever imagine wanting to be your own boss, or now becoming a coach? Like, growing up, how did you move from the advertising to doing your own businesses and jobs to now becoming a coach? Was this always in the back of your mind, or was there influences like family or mentors that kind of push you along?
Well, when I first started in business, my big aim was to earn $20,000 a year. And I remember I was on less than $10,000 a year, because this was 30 years ago, and I remember thinking, man, if I could get to 20 grand, I have made it. You know what I mean? Yep. And then slowly I thought, a bit of a goal was in advertising, if you're the head of a creative department, you're the creative director. And I was thinking, oh, maybe one day in my career I could be a creative director. And so I started thinking about that. But I didn't think about opening my own agency. And I didn't think about, making making millions of dollars. And slowly as you grow, you can see further. So a lot of people say, well, I can't see myself ever doing these things, but as long as you keep progressing each year, you find you can. And in the end, the company that eventually that I started with a friend with another guy, that was eventually worth over 500 million on the stock exchange. I didn't know anything about running a stock exchange company. I didn't know anything about raising finance, but in that particular venture, I raised $5 million to start the company. So none of these skills I knew how to do. None of these things I was thinking when I was young, and hopefully this will continue. Hopefully I continue to do things that I don't imagine that I was doing, many years earlier. There's a great Canadian coach, actually, Dan Sullivan, and he has this philosophy, which I love, which is always make your future bigger than your past.
Yep.
And I really love that. We've got to, for the more senior people in business who are listening to this, we've got to constantly be saying, okay, how can I make a leap that I think is barely possible? Because not only is that going to lead to more success, but it's a more exciting and lively way to live.
Definitely. I mean, all these are great, great valid points, because I totally respect the ones that have already gone through so many different ventures and raising money and being on the stock exchange. I mean, that's something that I've never even thought of, but I'm now dabbling into startups and becoming just funding VCs and stuff and it's very interesting in terms of what they're after. And you have to look at two realms of what is the business goals and what is the investor's objective, right? And make sure that it's in alignment, because everyone, especially in this tech boom, right? Everyone thinks that, you don't really, all it is money, but really you need more sales and money. Like no one's going to invest into a business if it has no business model or revenue stream, right? But everyone thinks they have this greatest idea, and I'm sitting back and I'm like, why would I invest my money into that when they don't even know how to grow the revenue in the first place, right? Like it's not a proven model, right?
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. I entirely agree. And you see more and more VCs saying, I need proof of traction. I want to see sales before I'm gonna put money in. Yeah. And it's that's why I think what you're doing with SEO is so important, because it can methodically lead to sales. And when people say, oh, my business isn't growing fast enough, they got to say, well, what are my sales funnels? What are my systemized methods of getting a lead and converting it? And so many businesses are still getting most of their business from referral. And from one side of that, it's wonderful that people are getting their business from referral, because it's an indication they're doing good work. But anybody who's getting most of their business from referral has got poor marketing systems. It's as simple as that, because they should be getting all kinds of business from people who've never heard of them. And that lack of sales orientation, that lack of systemization of sales, leads to not only a company a tenth the size that it should be. Even if someone's doing well, their company should be 10 times bigger if they'd have been really good at sales. But it also leads to a life of living on the roller coaster. Sometimes it leads, some people call us and we feel good, we make money that month, and sometimes they don't call us and we're full of fear. And we've got staff to pay and overheads and all this kind of stuff. Well, as Grant Cardone said, the great sales coach, he said, if you're worried about whether you're going to close the sale, it's not an issue about that sale. it's a sales pipeline issue.
Yeah.
You should have so many people coming in via systems, repeatable systems, that you don't really care if you close that sale.
Yep.
And so the stress of closing sales is a pipeline issue. It's nothing else. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. And I'm slowly learning more about marketing funnels. And that was one thing that I haven't really invested a lot of time in education and the people in place. But it's, again, when you're running a business, you're pulled in so many directions, right? And it's very difficult to stay focused and clear, right, on what is most important today, right?
Wow.
So, I'm learning as well. And, just like anything, I admit to what I don't know, and I'm going to improve on that, right? And I'm going to say I don't know everything, and I will never know everything, right?
Yeah.
And just try to improve daily on every little aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a key attitude. And then in addition to that, it needs prioritization. So, when I'm coaching people, I'm always saying, okay, well, we've got to improve our marketing. So let's block out time in the calendar each week for you to work on marketing. Because the truth is this, we could all work, literally as an entrepreneur, you could easily work 20 hours a day and not get everything done. So we will fill our days, but what will we fill them with? And the problem is, as soon as we've been in business, let's say a year, we've got enough things to do to avoid getting new clients. And so what we've got to do, if we don't block out time in our calendar that is, regardless of how busy we are, that we spend on creating systems to get people in, then what will happen is you'll be like over 98% of businesses that they just stop. They do not grow after a certain period of time because the entrepreneur is so busy, he can't or she can't grow it. That's a time blocking issue first.
Yeah. No, and that makes total sense. I'm going to take your advice for sure. Thank you. So in terms of all these successes and failures, I'm sure, what kind of challenges or mistakes have you kind of gone through? Can you name a couple that you kind of can say, I made it, but I overcame it, and this is how I did it?
Oh, well, I made so many mistakes, a ridiculous number of mistakes, truly. But of the ones that I've overcome, I used to be super disorganized, like chronically disorganized. Now, from one point of view, I was doing the one or two things that were move the business forward and were good for my career. But I mean, really embarrassingly disorganized. And I slowly overcame that by a very strong study of time management. So I give myself all these time management and productivity things to do during the day in order to counteract my natural way of being, which was to be disorganized. So I've reached the point where I think, I use my time better than 95% of people in business, but I was terrible when I first started. And I'm not perfect now. I can see all kinds of flaws in my time management now, but it's something I'm actively studying. So that's an example. And another example is, which we touched on before, ignoring the numbers. I'd always be about serving clients and trying to get more business, but I would ignore the actual numbers. And I was fortunate that I had businesses growing enough that I had full-time accountants or at least bookkeepers inside my companies, right? So in a way, that was bad because I just throw it all over to them and just assume things were going okay. And that's a crazy thing to do because it leads to all kinds of inefficiency in how you're running the business, what you're spending on staff, what you're spending on marketing, all that kind of stuff. And I avoided that. And I got to a point where I'm okay at it now. I wouldn't even say I'm good at it now, but I was able to overcome the worst parts of it. And then ultimately, I think self-belief is an issue. I've had a certain amount of belief to a certain extent. And then as I got older, I was able to enlarge my self-belief. And if I wasn't continually enlarging what was possible for me, then I think I would have ended up in a very different place at this time in my life. So that's another thing I've been able to overcome. But I will say this, I'm very much aware that, I may have had, built some large businesses, but I too am limited by how I'm thinking. But so is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is limited by certain aspects of his thinking. We are all limited by our thinking, and we've got to analyze that. We've got to say, okay, how am I thinking small here, or how am I, how's my self-identity needing to be improved? Because, we basically will perform in accordance with our self-identity. So we've got to enlarge that systematically and regularly.
No, I look at some of the mistakes you've done, or, things that you kind of improved on, as that's a part of business, right? Like, if you think about being an entrepreneur, you're not going to know everything. You might be a really good person at one designated task or area. Hire people that are better than you. And it's okay for them to be smarter and better and more efficient and more productive, because once you take, it's a matter of fact, everyone on my team is probably smarter than me in some aspects, right? And I'm totally okay with that. Once you let go and not control everyone and think you're smarter than everyone, this is the problem with business owner entrepreneurs as well. They think because they started the business, they have to know more than everyone else.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And this is how I kind of started as well. And I made a mistake. And now I'm like, I give a lot more onus on a lot of my team members. And I know they're going to have the best interest in me as long as you empower them, you train them, you teach them all the things that need to be taught in accordance to all the values and, everything in terms of your business. So
I think that's wonderful that you're doing that. I mean, it's so true. And I really, I didn't disrespect it, but I paid very little regard to the importance of leadership as an owner of a company. When I first started out, it was like, you got this work to do. I'm going to try and make sure you do it to a high standard. And that was about the extent of my leadership. And I think what you're doing so great, to understand that these people are really the future of my company. And so I've got to trust them. I've got to give them more than I think they're up for, so they grow. And then I've got to get very good at managing them and very good at leading them, because otherwise we're never going to grow any company that's substantial based on just the genius of one person. If we've even reached anywhere near that level, and it's a tough thing to do, isn't it?
It's
and I think it's tough for two reasons. One emotionally, and then secondly financially. People go, well, I can't afford to have that person. There's this gap. There's that will lower the amount that is coming to me, and I need that to feed my family, right? And that's a very real challenge. And I think that there's a few ways when I'm coaching people that I advocate that they think. The first is, can you find a part-timer who can take some of this off your hands that you can still afford? And then second of all, can you afford to have this person, employ them for 3 months? Because a lot of people say, I can't afford an assistant, or I can't afford to have someone handle this aspect of my work because their annual wage is this. Yeah. And I don't have that money. And I always say, well, what about 3-month trial? You can afford that, can't you? That's a quarter of that annual wage, and they usually can afford that. And I'll say, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then unfortunately let the person go. But at least experiment
Yes.
with delegating and bringing someone else in, and then getting disciplined about using your acquired time, the extra time that you've got from that person, doing stuff that's going to build the business. At least give it a try.
Exactly.
And that often helps.
And I've been pushing a lot of tasks that are time consuming, stressful on my behalf, and I hate doing, right? Like away and focus on things that I actually enjoy and are happy doing because I'm curious, right? I'm always learning and meeting clients and stuff that I feel has way more value in the business than that stuff, right? And the sooner you're able to do that as a business owner, I know it's difficult, but once you are able to, start doing it as soon as possible. Because my time is after school, after work is done, I want to spend time with family afterwards. So that is the most important time. So I want to make sure I'm able to do everything I need to during business hours. After hours, it's family time. So
yeah, brilliant. And I love that because, you know, a lot of people, even good business people, they've got a philosophy of excellence when they're at work, and then they get home and there's no philosophy of having a wonderful family experience, right? Like you're leading your family like you're doing. And what I love about what you're doing is you're applying your same philosophy of excellence during the day to the evening as well. And a lot of business people don't do that. You know, they have a departmentalized life when it comes to excellence. And I think it's great that you're aiming. You know, you're aiming. What is true success? It's to achieve a high level in the areas to which we value. And if you ask the average business owner, do you value your family? They say, of course I do. But then you say, well, you know, are you giving a commensurate amount of effort and thinking time to how you're going to be an excellent family leader as you are at work? And most of us would say no. So I think it's great that you've got that emphasis.
And I think, you know, as much as people read and watch or listen to videos on business, do the same thing for family. If you want to be a better parent or a better significant other, spouse, or whatever it is, there's a lot of information on there for that. And that's the only way you can improve, right? And surround yourself with people you respect that have already gone through it, that have already raised successful, great kids, right? Or great family members. And I'm always so curious, as you know, people I meet at the gym that are spending so much time there. I'm like, are you retired? You're only 45. Tell me how you got to that point, right? Because I'm very curious. I want to get to that too, right? And all these people are just happy, right? And I just want to gravitate towards people that are just like-minded, someone that's curious, that kind of enjoy life and aren't negative or always making excuses or stuff that are, you know, I don't need that in my life. So.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, that's probably why you've succeeded so much in business. Is I believe clients want to work with people like that.
Yeah.
So there's two things. I spend a lot of time with business owners helping them win more clients, and they often think it's what they're offering that is winning the client, and that is only partially true, because we live in a world where even if what we're offering is good, there's usually another 20 people offering something at that same level, right? Yeah. They don't. So many of us don't realize clients are humans. They just want to be with someone who's upbeat and optimistic and positive-minded and is enjoyable to be with, because, you know, they'd like to enjoy their life as well. Yeah. And you know, a tip for some people on this podcast is are you providing that positive experience that a human would like to be around?
Yes.
Or are you just trying to do transactions? Yeah. You know, and undercut the other guy or outperform the other guy. That's half of it, but it's only half of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, you know, I've seen this in advertising where, you know, I'll be pitching on accounts worth at least $5 million the client will be spending a year, at least, and above, right? And even with big decisions like that, half the time they just appoint the ad agency that they like.
Yeah.
They like the people.
It's the gut instinct. It's the relationship you've built. And it's all about like, is this person someone you can trust? They are saying something. Are they going to be owning up to every mistake and problem and issue? And are they able to deliver? And yes, I always make mistakes still, right? But I own up to it and I overcome it and I try to improve and minimize the mistakes and errors and, stuff like that. And I'm very transparent that way, right? Like I don't mind letting people know about my wrongdoings, and it's okay. And I can sleep at night, and as opposed to hold everything in, right? Like hiding things, it's the worst thing that you can do to yourself. It's more detrimental for your health, right?
I think that's a great point. I think people trying to be someone else is very bad for your health. Yeah. Very bad for your health. And as you say, it's not effective with a client. The clients can see through this half the time, or they sense a certain insincerity with the person that they're dealing with. Yeah. Whereas, by being honest with them, they open up as well. There's a very famous advertising guy, Bill Bernbach, who ran the greatest ad agency of the 1960s and 70s in America, Doyle Dane Bernbach, now DDB. And he said a brilliant line. He said, "A small admission gains a large acceptance." And by that, he means if we admit our faults with clients, then they're prepared to believe many other things and support us in many other things. Yeah. But if we never admit fault, we lose that deeper level of relationship.
Yeah, it's so very true. I don't know. I think me being a business owner now, it's made me grow as a person. It's made me realize how important it is to impact others, take care of my staff, take care of my clients, and what am I bringing to the table that other SEO companies aren't bringing, right? And how do I differentiate? Yes, but how do I make an impact, right? And that's the main difference of what I'm trying to achieve. I really enjoy what this conversation has unfolded, but just interacting with more people. And this is what's missing with technology today. Like that human relationship with one another is lost from this instant messaging, Slack groups, and all these other tools. People may think it's useful, but reality is people still want to deal with someone they see, trust, handhold, handshake, that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And you used to sell by phone. And what I notice now is a lot of people are not selling by phone. Yep. And they're not reaching out to people on the phone. And I know why, because it's uncomfortable and because the email exists. But the truth is that if we just got back to human interaction regarding our sales, most businesses would put on a lot more business for two reasons. One, not that many people are calling business owners anymore because everybody's using all the other technology. And second of all, to your point, you're establishing human relationship, which is what we're all craving because we're in these we're isolated by all these digital connections.
Yeah. And that's what I think makes us stand apart locally here in Toronto, because we actually go out. If you're within a couple, maybe 100 kilometers, we'll come out and drive to meet you, right? Yeah. And that interaction, no other agency will do, right? Like they won't drive out because, it's a digital company. You don't need to meet me. Well, let's, because I learned this at Yellow Pages, right? While I was there. It's all about face-to-face human and getting to know them on a personal level, right? And once you do that, it's like once you uncover what their pain points are, then you can deliver whatever you want and they're going to buy, right?
Oh, yeah. And the trust level goes through the roof.
Exactly.
Absolutely through the roof.
Yes.
And they're picking up all these subtle communications
Yeah.
in your facial features, in how you pause and look, and how your level of interest in your eyes when you're with them, and I would argue even your kind of vibration of, is it a positive, good person I'm talking to, or is it, some guy who's saying the right things, but I just don't feel like I'm comfortable with them. And you're getting all these advantages by being in person, and everybody would be if they just do more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the so-called time efficiency, because most of your competitors are saying, well, that's not efficient. Well, what's efficient is getting a high number of sales per lead, right?
Conversion rate.
Yeah. And I'll bet your conversion rate's higher than many.
Exactly, right? And we actually refine our process to really just go after a very unique audience type, because we know, who we want to go after, right? But yeah, it's a lot of fun just learning the entire process. As a business owner, just stay curious, right? Because there's never going to be, you'll never know everything, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I love about so far my journey. I've been just slowly plugging away, but slowly making improvements on little things, right? Operational things and marketing things, and just becoming a little bit more productive day after day after day, instead of these big huge leaps, right? So
yeah. Well, that's wonderful. I loved. I remember reading this thought that does the average businessman have 20 years experience, or do they have 2 years experience repeated for the next 18 years? And I think that there's a lot of business people where they reach a certain level of success, and then all they do is keep repeating that same thing that got them some degree of success, right? And they're completely overtaken by people who maybe were inferior to them and were a smaller business to them, but just kept on plugging away and kept on, moving an inch by inch forward. And that's where, ageism comes into the picture, where some people won't employ older people. Now, that is part of it is just simple bias, and is terrible, because there's so many wise older people. But part of it is because some older people have not kept up to date with the latest stuff. And they've got some degree of wisdom, but they haven't been behaving like they're just starting in the industry. And that's the trick, isn't it? When you're 65, to still be behaving as if you're in your first 2 years in the industry. Well, you like that. You combine that attitude with your inner wisdom, you'd be unbeatable. I think there's few people do that.
Well, it's the hunger, right? It's like the challenge is when you gotten to that level of success, you kind of become complacent, right? You're like, oh, I'm more comfortable now. Do I need to work as hard? So it all depends on internal drive, I believe, right? And mental, on what you really want to make out of your life, right? And your time in society, right? But yeah, great points. I wanted to kind of end on a couple questions regarding, so nowadays, whereabouts do you live? Are you still in Australia? Or are you on the West Coast, I think?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles in West Hollywood, and I've been here for about 11 years. But I go to Australia often and coach in person. But I coach people from all over the world, like Asia, England, even Africa. I had a client from Africa, and certainly America. Because I'm just coaching like this, where I'm usually on video, or they might prefer the phone, and we're talking like this, and so it's all over the world. I coach people of every different industry, and many different size businesses as well.
No, that's amazing. So what keeps you like right now? I know you're doing a lot of coaching and mentoring. Are you also involved in family stuff or community stuff in your area in LA as well? Or do you still do that back in Australia as well?
Yeah, certainly local community in a kind of informal way, trying to get engaged with neighbors and stuff like that. But I don't think I do enough going to organizations and helping out. Do you do much in that area?
Yeah, I try as much as I can as well. So local city business centers, I try to mentor some of the new entrepreneurs, a part of a couple associations. It's just trying to give, right? The more you're out there, especially I'm just starting my business journey, so I need to get out there more so than someone that's more established, right? But just have fun. In terms of like, don't expect much. I'm not the type that expects anything. I just want to keep giving, and hopefully they see that. I'm not trying to get anything in return. I just want to really genuinely want to help, right? And if they see that and they like that, then that's ultimately what I'm all about, right?
Yeah, brilliant. And look, and as you say, you're not doing it for this reason, but I'm sure you get a lot of clients from just being out there helping people. There's a beautiful saying, the heart that gives gathers. And I think that is so true. If you just keep giving, then the law of reciprocation, the law of the universe, karmic return, you're going to get it back.
Yeah, I really appreciate this whole hour-long talk with you, Siimon. So how can some people get a hold of you, reach you via social media? Like, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, just pop onto my website, which is SiimonReynolds.com. Now, that's Siimon with two I's, Siimon, Reynolds, REYNOLDS.com. And jump on and reach out to me there and be delighted to help anyone with coaching.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I know you're very busy. And if you're ever in Toronto, feel free to reach out to me or let me know when you're in, and we'll definitely get together. Thanks a lot, Siimon. And again, so much valuable insight. It was my pleasure to have you on today.
It's my absolute pleasure. And it's really fortuitous that we're doing this podcast, because we're doing literally we opened it 4 days ago, and for the next 3 days we're offering a 50% discount on coaching if people come in now. So wonderful to do the podcast at this time. If anyone wants coaching, that's great. Otherwise, fabulous to meet you.
Perfect. Thank you, Siimon.
All the best. Cheers.